The people we represent. Lord, I see saints in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Will you please turn to item 2 on your agenda, the minutes. Is everyone agreed that I start the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on Wednesday, the 16th of October 2024, as a correct record? Item number 3, members' interests. Are there any interests that members would like to declare in relation to any agenda item this evening? No? Item number 4, chairs' engagements and announcements. Before I turn to my engagements, I would like to take the opportunity to remind you all that my annual carol service will be taking place this year on the 18th of December at 6 o'clock at All Saints Church High Street, Huntingdon. I do hope we will be able to, or as many of you as possible, will be able to make it, and I look forward to seeing you there. I'd like to draw your attention to engagements which are listed on page 21 of your agenda. These are only engagements which I've undertaken since the previous council meeting held on the 16th of October. All in all, it's been quite a busy time rushing around with the hospital things going on, as you'd expect at this time of the year. One amendment to the engagements is I never actually made it because of unexpected reasons to do Sunday service on Sunday. So that needs to be struck up like in the Item number 5, questions by members of the public. Moving on to item number 6, notice of motion. May I ask Councillor Martin Hassel to move this motion and to open the debate which will follow. Although reading bills to be closed, members must stand to speak to address the meeting. Speeches must be directed to the question, issue under discussion. No speech may exceed 5 minutes in length without the consent of the chair. A member who has spoken on motion may not speak again whilst it is the subject of debate, unless there is an amendment. Thank you. And we have 20 minutes allocated for this item. Let's try and stick to it if possible. Thank you. Councillor Hassel.
Thank you, Chair. So, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, and officers, this evening's consideration of the right of placing ground motion addresses the urgent need for food security in the face of the cost of living crisis, food shortages, global conflicts, climate change, advent of ultra-processed foods, and pandemic recovery efforts. It aligns with HEC's corporate plan to improve the quality of life of local people, and you should note that it's been successfully passed in its present form at other councils. I emphasise that this motion merely resolves to refer its options to the Overview and Scrutiny Panel, Environment, Communities and Partnerships,
and then on to Cabinet for consideration. So there's no direct decision making really made here other than to push it on to our Scrutiny Panel and Cabinet. But presenting this motion also provides an opportunity to examine a broader concern, the need to foster a more receptive environment for innovative proposals within Huntingdonshire District Council. So the tone from the top, this is the unspoken direction from leadership, for many years has discouraged, even blocked, meaningful member-led initiatives. The arduous journey to bring this motion before you, spanning months of correspondence and a cabinet member neutering it through amendment, exemplifies this challenge. This approach contradicts the very essence of democratic governance. Motions at our council mirror private members' bills in Parliament. Both allow individual members to add crucial issues often overlooked in the main agenda. Both spark debate and diverse perspectives, leading to meaningful change, from the abolition of slavery to ongoing discussions on assisting dying, as we recently experienced. These weren't dictated from above, they were driven by individual voices. At HDC, however, this vital mechanism is stifled. We've seen precious few motions in too many years. This inaction creates a vacuum, leaving critical community concerns unaddressed, from food security to environmental sustainability. We must ask ourselves, how long has HDC been hindering this fundamental democratic process? The answer demands action. I can't change this, but we can. So to rectify this, I propose a two-pronged approach. First, we must empower all council members. We need comprehensive training sessions, particularly for those new to motions like myself, providing guidance and boosting confidence. This ensures every councillor feels equipped to contribute. Second, we must ensure transparency and accountability. This motion proposes referral to the Overview and Scrutiny Panel, Environment, Communities and Partnerships, and then to Cabinet. This structured process guarantees thorough review, constructive dialogue,
Councillor Hassel.
and transparent decision-making process, setting a standard for future motions.
Councillor Hassel, sorry to interrupt. Could I ask you to actually propose what the motion is, please? Thank you.
Yes, so I'll just finish this last bit. Some may fear this change. However, it's not
No,
about chaos, but
you need to propose the motion. Thank you.
yes. Okay. So the motion is to the council resolve to refer the following overview and sorry, I got the wrong. This is the amended one. So the council resolves to refer the following options to the Overview and Scrutiny Panel, Environment, Communities and Partnerships, and then Cabinet for consideration. I'm not quite sure people have this, again, training, that's what I'm referring to. So why is this not proposing the motion? I was referring to it, you have it, councillors have it.
Yes, I know, but it's normal for the speaker to actually propose the motion before actually speaking on it, because you were making a speech on the motion without actually saying what the motion was. I know we have it in front of us, but it's just the way we should do it. Thank you.
Yeah. So the motion proposes to resolve to refer the following options to the Overview and Scrutiny Panel, Environment, Communities and Partnerships, and then for Cabinet for consideration. So the first one is mapping council-owned land, which is to identify and create a map of all council-owned land suitable for community cultivation. Ensure that this map is publicly available at no cost to residents and actively promote across all wards. Consider land suitable for food cultivation or biodiversity unless it contains proven hazards or is slated for development within 24 months. Facilitating community cultivation, make council-owned land available for cultivation through simple licenses granted to community organisations at no cost. Ensure licensing conditions do not create significant barriers for residents in terms of finances or practical requirements. extend public liability coverage to include food growing projects on public realm land, relieving community groups of this burden. 3, opportunities for community groups. When community groups cultivate public realm land for food growing or wildlife spaces, allow them the opportunity to bid for the land if it becomes available for sale. Provide necessary infrastructure such as water access or water harvesting to ensure sustainable cultivation. And then finally, allotment provision. Adhere to the 1969 Thorpe's Report's recommendation of a minimum allotment provision equivalent to 15 plots per 1,000 households. HDC to compile comprehensive statistics on allotment provision and take up across Huntingdonshire. This data will provide invaluable insights for future planning and community engagement. The point being that I made earlier on is that the motion goes to overview and scrutiny panel and then on to Cabinet for consideration. So I recognise not every single one of these options is going to be relevant to HDC, but I'm asking that the scrutiny panel go through that with officers in order to recommend to Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ferguson, thank you.
Can I speak now, Chair? Thank you. Just to start off by saying that I am in favour of having motions at full council. We haven't had a motion since Councillor Bywater's famous goldfish motion, which I enjoyed, and I think it's something we should do more often, although not as much as County Council, where we do 5, well, members' motions, we do 5 at a time at County Council and it becomes a bit tedious. So I'm happy to do this tonight. I'm also happy to second this motion. I live on a housing estate in St Neots that's famous for having a high density of properties with tiny gardens. It also includes very many flats which do not have any gardens at all. This is really ironic because it's called Love's Farm, named after the arable farmland that used to occupy that space. And when I look around me on all sides of St Neots East and across the district, I can see acres of arable farmland being torn up for houses, roads and diesel railways. My garden is so tiny and receives so little sunlight that we found it impossible to grow anything other than a few manky tomatoes so manky that the children won't eat them. And in the single sunny corner of the garden where we grow that stuff, that's all I've got. So like most people, I'm forced to buy all of my produce from the supermarket, often imported products at inflated prices. This isn't about me, because even if I had a big garden, I'd still kill anything I tried to grow. But it's a problem faced by many members of our community who do want to grow their own produce. So as an illustration, when I was first elected as a councillor, I became aware that some of the residents of my estate had taken matters into their own hands and started planting vegetables and flowers on the rather sizable grass verges outside the houses adjacent to the highway. Now, at first I was outraged. I was a officious new tech councillor and I adopted a you can't do that gov attitude with them and openly criticised them for using public land as an extension of their gardens. You'll get in the way of council mowers, I told them, and county council highways will have your guts for garters. Predictably, they ignored me, as many residents do, and they persisted with their semi-illegal garden, which I've seen grow into, that small patch of land through community endeavour grow into a generally useful piece of garden where they grew fruit and vegetables and flowers. So although I agree with them, I don't agree completely because I'm still officious enough to think that they need to have permission to do it, which is kind of the point of this motion. So we need to acknowledge that not everyone has the ability or the permission to grow their food, and that urban agriculture is a community endeavour that best serves the people who can least afford to buy their own fresh produce, who are the ones who generally can least afford to grow it. So I'm happy to second this motion with a caveat that it needs to be practical and affordable, which I think is the point of putting it through ONS and Cabinet, and doesn't expose the council to undue financial administrative burden. And I'm also happy to listen and learn from the intellectual debate here tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Would anybody else like to speak? Councillor Davenport-Ray. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members on their desks have a, let's call it salmon-colored piece of paper, which is an amendment that I have written. So first I will put the amendment. The Council resolves to refer the following information to the Overview and Scrutiny Panel, Environment, Communities, and Partnerships. And then now I'll speak to why I've put the amendment through. I had a few concerns when I first read the motion. The section on the Council agrees There's 5 points there. I agree with all of those. This is a very important topic. It's one we should be talking about. And one of the things that worries me is how much our council already does and how many opportunities residents already have. And this motion made me realize perhaps they don't know about them. And perhaps that's because all that information is not in one place. And so that led me to the list of information that I would like to be sent to overview and scrutiny. Rather than constraining their debate to the items that are in the substantive motion, I would like this information the officers have already compiled, which is in your inbox as well, from the 3rd of December. I would like this information to be presented to scrutiny in order to instigate some discussion there. Maybe they have some ideas outside of what's in the motion. Also, I think that there's 2 things that my colleagues have said tonight that really surprised me. The first was, given Councillor Hassell's background, I was surprised not to see the motion mention the idea of risk, because there certainly are risks involved in a scheme like this. If not done well, those risks could be both legal and reputational, and they need to be taken into account. I'm surprised to hear from Councillor Ferguson that he doesn't feel there is ways of community cultivation on Love's Farm. I also live on the housing estate, and me and other residents are very pleasantly, at every harvest period, scrumping and foraging around different parts of the housing estate that were designed by HDC planners with that in mind. Apple trees, quince trees, blackberries, walnuts, chestnuts, things that we can find on HDC land, and we enjoy doing that. So there's one more element I'll bring to your attention specifically in my amendment. That's in the additional commitments number 3. The bill that is mentioned in the substantive motion, it is the amendment referred to was never brought, and the bill is now actually an act. And so I have added, amended the wording to describe a letter that could be written in the spirit of some of those amendments that were put to that bill that is now an act. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder, please, yeah, for the motion, for the amendment, yeah? Councillor, yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Sanderson, thank you. Okay, I'll throw it open to the floor for debate. Thank you. So,
I think you meant Councillor Wakefield.
yeah. Yeah. Councillor Sanderson? Wakeford. Oh, sorry. Councillor Wakeford, please.
No.
It's a second. Yeah. You seconded it. Yeah. Thank you. Right.
What did
clarification, just because I can hear much of it, can you please clarify what we debated? Just so that everybody's very clear. I believe it might be the amendment, but I'll leave that for you to clarify.
Yeah. Yeah, we are debating the amendment. Thank you.
Sorry, can you just, because I thought Councillor Wakefield said he reserved his right to speak, but he didn't have his microphone on.
Okay.
Can you?
Right.
I thought he did, but he didn't have his microphone on.
Yeah. Councillor Wakeford, I'm sorry, I've seen you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Wakeford, would you like to speak?
I'll reserve my right to speak on it if others wish to come in. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on the amendment, but I do thank Councillor Hassell for his motion this evening, and I welcome the motion in principle and recognise its involvement with the community, cost of living and ecological crisis. So understanding the councils that have adopted Right to Grow, these are allotment providing authorities with resources in place to deliver the initiative to extend to the community gardens and growing. HDC is not the allotment authority within Huntingdonshire. The motions talk of food, cultivation and biodiversity. The District Council protects and manages their natural environment every day as guardians of 1,534 hectares of green space, 42.8 hectares of woodland, and managed tree canopies 400 hectares. HDC received 1.3 million for biodiversity from CPCA. From that, HDC has been investing in nature, covering all major areas across the district, including community grants. which have enabled others to enhance their site. Biodiversity audits of strategic HDC sites, skills and initiatives who have gained City and Guilds qualifications, and iNaturalist partnering. In a separate project, a corridor of 114 purple leaf plum trees were planted in 2022 in the Oxmoor housing estates. As we know, towns and parishes within our districts have statutory duties for allotments. In November 2023, a policy for transfer of public open spaces more than a quarter of an acre was approved here at HDC. This enables towns and parishes to approach HDC with a business case should they wish to lease land from HDC. We need to be aware that many of our parks and countryside centres have much needed friends groups. Some of our open spaces have management plans produced by the groups. Any change of use in our open spaces would need to be consulted on with residents and our friends groups. As a former allotment holder for over a decade, I understand the need to grow your own. However, it also comes with challenges such as vandalism and security. Here in HDC, we have almost 600 parks and open spaces which visitors and the community relax, play, enjoy nature and be active in. We need to take into consideration the Healthy Open Space Strategy, which is 4 years into a 10-year plan. A questionnaire was completed by over 700 people and had over 500 conversations with members of the public aged 4 to 94. None asked about food cultivation. Although in the strategy, it states we will look for ways that our parks and open spaces can tackle issues that affect our community, including mental health and social isolation. We already have 14 community projects enabled in the district, and if they wish to look at cultivation, then this is something the team can look at. If any community group are interested, then they can contact the Parks and Countryside team, as there are mechanisms in place already to support them if they so wish to look at ideas of cultivation. So I support the amendment to refer the following information in it to the overview and scrutiny panel. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hodgson-Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listening to Councillor Taylor, I wasn't sure whether she was supporting the proposed amendment or opposing the proposed amendment. But I guess one of the reasons for that is that it goes to the very heart of what is the purpose of this amendment. Because this amendment is actually saying the same as the underlying proposed motion, just in different words. And to me, it strikes me that both the original motion as proposed by Councillor Hassel and the amendment as proposed by Councillor Davenport-Gray completely missed the point of the correct way that the council should address this kind of issue. In his opening speech, Councillor Hassel referred to constitutional issues and procedural issues that are lacking. It should not be the council determining what gets referred to overview and scrutiny to be looked at by a task and finish group. That should be initiated within overview and scrutiny itself. So Councillor Hassel has touched on a deficiency in our operational procedures and our constitution, but it highlights that we don't in this council use overview and scrutiny as it should be used. But this motion and this proposed amendment, I cannot support the amendment because it adds nothing of any substantive value to the original proposed motion. And therefore, I don't understand the point of this, because whether you refer X or Y to overview and scrutiny, it is up to overview and scrutiny to decide what it thinks should be referred to Cabinet, if anything, and what proposals should come forward. And therefore, I cannot support the amendment because it adds nothing of value. And I think the amendment should be rejected because it is wasting council time when we could be actually discussing more important substantive issues. Thank you. I beg that we oppose this amendment.
Councillor Tevlin, please.
Many thanks. I am very much in support of the proposal. However, I believe Councillor Davenport-Ray's amendment refines the wording. I think it's important that this is discussed at Council as a motion, both the proposal and the amendment, because the issues it highlights really impact our residents. I'm just going to add that I might have an interest in the fact that of what I'm about to say, in that my other employer is another authority who works in partnership with a charity called Garden Organic. Having worked with them, I can see the benefits of grassroots activism, going out into communities, enabling community gardens, enabling parishes and communities to have their input in growing organically or in growing whatever they want, because our food production is under threat. Today we have farmers out protesting the streets in Parliament, and the main line is no food, no farmers. And that's why in today's situation with food instability, both the proposal and the amendment are vital that we have this discussion at local level, grassroots, excuse the pun, level here today. And I think both Councillor Hassel and Councillor Davenport-Ray have proposed something that is really important. I am going to support Councillor Davenport-Ray's amendment in the fact that having it grounded within the local plan, particularly around allotments, and having this spoken out at scrutiny is going to be the best way forward. So I support the amendment. Thank you.
Chair, just with your permission, I'd just like to just make a quick point there. Councillor Tevlin, thank you very much for bringing your interests to the attention of Council. I think, given the nature of that, you shouldn't vote at the end of this matter.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am a little surprised as to why this has come to council, because allotments are managed by parish and town councils. So I feel that HDC would be duplicating the work at significant cost to HDC. To me, it makes sense for the parish and town councillors and residents to determine how they use the allotments and what they grow. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brett Mickleborough.
I'm really hoping that my half-eaten mince pie isn't picked up on the YouTube feed. I listened to the point being made about our awareness of the Constitution, some of the procedural elements and what I've heard this evening. I really hope that the comments that I've heard made during the motion being put forward have been put into that working party that is looking at the gaps that I think all of us are aware of within the Constitution as we look to improve that to make democracy as good as it can be at Huntingdonshire. I'm not sure if people will be aware that we have a commercial investment strategy review taking place in the near future. Part of that review will look at our existing land and buildings, not just within the commercial strategy, but the buildings that we have acquired over time, with a view of what can we do with these. I would like to think that we could roll ideas like this into that strategy piece rather than having it wandering around in different parts of our organisation. And I will speak to the point around the investment strategy. Yeah, I think I complain about sizeism from the technology providers here, please. Yeah, what I would prefer us to be doing is to be reviewing the possibility of this sort of activity within the bounds of what might be the future for elements of our existing land and buildings. And as a result of that, rather than having a separate piece of work carrying on or taking place, I would rather that we think about that course of action. Now, I'm not bringing an amendment to do so, because otherwise we will be here till not just Christmas but Easter. But as a result, I will be voting against both motions.
Councillor Ross Martin.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I very much agree with the sentiment and the words of my colleague, Councillor Hodgson-Jones. I don't know why this amendment has come to us, if I'm completely honest. I don't think it adds anything to the original motion. It just changes the words around a little bit. So I won't be voting in favour of the amendment or the motion in general. And if the amendment is voted down, I'm more than happy to stand up again and to speak against the motion itself and the many flaws that are within it. But one of the things that I will raise, because one of the biggest issues that I see within this policy is that it goes against Council's own policy that was created last year. And within Appendix D of the disposal and acquisition transfer of land, one of the points says under the disposal policy that the land and the property can only be determined for disposal if it's deemed as surplus and therefore not needed for the corporate or investment priorities of this council. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the open spaces strategy that this council adopted in October 2020 would deem all of our land as a priority from a corporate perspective of this council. So this motion and the amendment falls down straight away just on that point alone. So I'll leave it there, Chair. If the amendment is rejected, I will talk again on the substantive motion, but I'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Barry Chapman, please.
Thank you, Chair. I haven't got a long speech to make, but I do want to just mention, with regards to the amendment, Councillor Ferguson's wonky tomatoes, because I remember clearly when the plan was originally done for Loves Farm, there were allotments put in by the within the Loves Farm, and when it came to the planning stage for Monksfield, the second half of that, the allotments land suddenly disappeared and was to be combined with Monksfield to make a bigger thing. And it just seems that within the planning process, what's happened is that the opportunity to have allotments in that area so that Councillor Ferguson and others can plant their tomatoes has been lost. So I do want to draw to the council's attention that there is a role. It may be that parish councils manage allotments, but as far as this council goes, there is an opportunity to at least support the spirit of this motion or the amendment, whatever, to provide allotments by ensuring that the planning process does emphasise the importance of allotments, and that we ensure that these pieces of land aren't then reused or repurposed in further applications. I notice on the amendment that it says there's an opportunity for towns and parish councils to propose land to be reserved for allotments. And I'm very curious about this because during the call for sites, it seemed as though we were concentrating on, from a parish perspective, we were concentrating on where new homes would be built. And I think that as we've got this in the amendment, it would have been much more productive, I think, if this council had have pushed out to all the towns and parishes that the local plan preparation is a question of yes, you accept development, and yes, you also specify some of the things like allotments and green open spaces that your community needs. I'm still sitting here wondering whether or not I support the amendment or the original proposal, but thank you. I felt I needed to say that about allotments.
Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you, colleagues. So I think changing the words of a motion is rather what an amendment typically does, would be my sort of straight response to Councillor Martin. But I think the main motion has many ideas that are interesting and may merit further exploration. Though, as Councillor Taylor rightly noted, not all may be critical community concerns in the language of the speech and proposal, given the absence of them as asks coming up in recent consultation and engagement exercises we've done around our green space. But the motion lists a lot of specific proposals. Some appear to be significantly costly, some may not be realistically possible, some, as Councillor Martin rightly says, appear to conflict with things we've determined previously, and they may not be the right options or the best options for us to act on the spirit of the points in the acknowledges section. So instead, and also, of course, as Councillor Hodgson-Jones says, he's quite right, it's not appropriate for us to seek to constrain or tie the hands of scrutiny or mandate what it does. So instead of offend against that principle, this amendment provides the relevant scrutiny panel with useful information that's relevant to the ideas in the original motion. Its effects will be to relay that formally to the panel, which can then decide whether it wishes to do anything at all with the information. So I'd be keen to allow the panel, if it wishes, then to consider this issue in the round, if they want to do some further work, perhaps a task and finish group or not, to work up specific proposals with a view to bringing those to Cabinet in due course, if they wish. And I do think this is the better route to expressing the basic ideas in the motion, rather than constraining the panel and Cabinet to think only in terms of the particular, somewhat problematic list in the original motion.
Thank you. Councillor Devonport-Ray, would you like to sum up before we take the vote? Thank you.
Can we check the procedure rules?
I'm sorry?
Chair, on a point of order, the Constitution says that the mover of the original motion gets to speak last and debate.
That's exactly what we're checking on.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Hassel. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, so I think that the most important thing is that what we've heard today is a lot of different viewpoints. And I think it's highlighted to me that not every single aspect of the motion, or possibly even the amendment, are going to be suitable for this council. But it also, just picking up on Councillor Hodgson-Jones's point, is that it does offer the opportunity for us to use scrutiny properly, is not to have a formulated answer that is presented to scrutiny, but our scrutiny function to actually bring these points together and to make recommendations through to Cabinet. I guess the primary difference between the proposal, just picking up on the comments there, the difference between the proposal and the amendment is the amendment literally does not involve Cabinet. So and so the removal, the amendment's removal of the vital Cabinet referral severely limits the proposal's impact, reduce it from a call to action to an informal presentation. And that really undermines the original purpose of the motion and prevents meaningful progress on this important initiative. But it's really enlightening just to hear all the different arguments. And I think one of the key points from my perspective is that we need to be doing more of this, more of these kind of debates, because it gives much more meaning to this council. So thank you.
Councillor Davenport-Ray, would you like to sum up for the amendment, please?
Can we check the procedure rules on that?
Right. Thank you very much. Yeah, we now know the truth. You don't speak. Okay, we will move straight to a vote then by a show on the amended version, please. Which you On the amendment, yeah. On the amendment. Thank you.
It's on the amendment, that's all we're writing on.
Chair, with your permission, said this is going to be a vote on the amendment which has been put forward. Depending on the outcome of that vote, it may or may not become a substantive motion in front of us, in which case we would vote again. But this is a vote on the amendment, and I think if it's to assist, we might also have that put on the screen, or we can rely on the sheets. On the sheets.
On the sheet. Yeah.
On the screen. Oh, it's down on the screen as well.
Yeah.
Yes, the salmon. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, I'll give you a minute or so just to digest that again before we take the vote. Thank you.
Can I? So just while you're all having opportunity to read that, just to follow on from Tom's point, this is the vote on Councillor Davenport Ray's amendment. If it's carried, that will become the substantive motion, which you then can all debate again, should you wish to. If it fails, we go back to Councillor Hassell's original motion, and then everybody who's not yet spoken on, everybody has a clean slate again speaking on the substantive motion. So just so everyone's clear what we're doing next. So when the chairman asks for the vote, that's what you're doing. Yes to the amendment or no to the amendment. I hope that's helpful.
Okay. Would you all please vote? Yeah, would those in favour of the amendment please raise their hands? Okay, thank you. Those against, please. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Do we have any abstentions, please? Yeah. I'm abstaining as well, actually. So. Okay. We have 15 for, 22 against, and 5 abstentions. So the amendment fails. Thank you. We now move back to the original motion. Would Martin, sorry. Okay, who would like to speak on the original motion, please? Do we? Thank you. Right, Councillor Hodson-Jones, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are things in this motion that are important, but as I said earlier this evening, the correct way to take this forward is for this to have been initiated within ONS, and for the ONS to have a task and finish group. The way that the motion is set out is seeking to ring fence what ONS is able to do and how it goes forward. But it's not the correct way to do this. So although I understand why Councillor Hassel has proposed this motion, what should have happened is that this should have started in ONS and a finished product be brought here to Council if a finished product were appropriate. It's not at all clear to me that what is actually being proposed is within the power of the Council to deliver, and the Council should not be passing motions that it cannot deliver on. And that's an important constitutional factor. So whilst I think that we should vote down this motion, I fully accept that ONS and the appropriate ONS panel should take this forward and look into it without their hands being tied and work out whether there is something that can be done. But as a council, we should not be mandating ONS as to what it should do in its task and finish groups. And that is why I am opposed to this motion. I urge the council to reject the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Davenport-Ray, please.
It's very rare that I agree completely with Councillor Hodgson-Jones. My amendment was an attempt to get this back into the track that I think is constitutionally correct for creating the work of this council. I am often underwhelmed by watching overview and scrutiny, and we arrive at the agenda item that says, here's the forward plan, what do you think? What would you like to add? And I hear silence. So I understand the reason why the motion was put here, perhaps through that frustration that the ideas are not coming through that route. But I really hope that they will in future. And I agree that I hope that overview and scrutiny might want to look at this topic. I think it should come directly from them. And as Councillor Hodgson-Jones says, if they find it worthy, if the risks can be mitigated, then perhaps they might want to put forward some ideas after consideration. Thank you.
Councillor Jonathan Gray, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I want to thank both councillors for the work that they put into getting us this far this evening. I think there's been they're quite lengthy motions, is probably my first reflection, very detailed. I'm delighted that Councillor Hodgson-Jones is back in the chamber, and I completely agree with the comments that he has made in terms of, I think this should really have gone straight to the scrutiny panel. This is a perfect opportunity for our scrutiny chairs to rise to the occasion and grasp what is in front of us, whatever happens to either of these this evening. It's interesting that Councillor Hassel, when he was replying to Councillor Davenport-Ray's amendment, said not everything about either the amendment or the original proposal may be correct. I was slightly paraphrasing you, but it was along those lines. Not everything may be perfect in there, which sort of, in a way, kind of points in the right direction, in that we shouldn't really be approving things in there that are only 3/4 right or 4/5 right. We need to really follow along and do the right thing. Councillor Mickelberg, sorry, I apologise. I do agree with you with regards to the commercial investment strategy review. We may not agree on where that review goes and all the substance of that review, but I do think where we're referring to council land, which we are very clearly here, it needs to be taken in the round, it needs to be considered against everything else that's there. There's no mention really here about things like best value, managing public money, the implication on resources. nor should there be perhaps, because that's something that should come out through the scrutiny process. And so I do hope that the scrutiny panel in question will pick this up, will run with it. I think it's important. Largely, I think there's responsibility across all three authorities here in Cambridgeshire, and one might argue the Mayor could probably get involved if he wanted to as well. But I'm not certain that this is the way to go about doing what we're doing here. So thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you. Councillor Nathan Hunt, please.
Thank you, Chair. I know there's been a lot mentioned of overview and scrutiny this evening, so I thought I would just jump in as my role as Vice Chair. So I'm not going to express a view on the actual substance of the motion, but I'm going to touch on a lot of the points that have been mentioned. And what I'm going to say comes more from procedure and constitutional reasons. And I didn't speak earlier as I wanted to let the amendment play out, and as I believe that the wording of the substantive motion affects what could have happened next. So a lot has been mentioned about scrutiny maybe not working as it should. I reject that, but I think a lot has been done to bring it to a much healthier point. And I pay tribute to councillors on both sides of this chamber for engaging positively with the workshops and the other work packages that have happened. And I can tell you there has been a lot happening. And one of the things that has happened recently is a new work submission program and a new procedure for that to be submitted and assessed. I was not made aware of this proposal as a piece of work before this was published on the agenda, and I'm not sure if Councillor Kerr was as well. So my preference would have been for that to have come through that assessment process. I will be voting against this evening, as I do not believe this is the right way for it to come through, but I would heavily encourage Councillor Hassel to submit this through that mechanism where we can chat through it, we can assess where review and scrutiny may be able to help, if it would be able to play into the council's roles or kind of corporate priorities, and to see if it would be a valuable use of scrutiny time, which it may well be. And in that case, we would be able to find it time on the work programme as a proper item and get this done properly. So like I've said, I will be voting against, but Councillor Hassel, I would encourage to speak to me and Councillor Kerr in the coming days. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wakeford, please.
Thank you, colleagues. I'm going to ape Councillor Davenport-Ray because I not only agree with every word Councillor Hodgson-Jones said, I agree, I think, with almost every word Councillor Gray said as well. The amendment that we supported was intended as a way of enabling, certainly from my point of view, enabling me to feel able to support the gist of the motion. But as the original motion stands, I will also be voting against it, but with the same breath would absolutely encourage Councillor Martin, as others, forgive me, Councillor Hassel, as others have done, to bring elements of this forward to the relevant scrutiny panel to look at.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask Councillor Hassel to sum up before the vote, please?
So thank you. Yeah, so I take on board everything that everyone said, particularly Councillor Hodgson-Jones's comments. The only thing that confuses me, and I think what this is highlighting is the real massive uncertainty that we have about raising motions at this council. I think it's very difficult, it's very painful, and we need to encourage it more. And that, my previous points earlier on about having proper training so people really do understand how to raise motions at this council, how to get, so that it should go perhaps to overview and scrutiny before it goes through. And the other challenge that I would make is that this very motion actually has been approved at other councils. So it may well be, so I'm confused constitutionally. If this, for example, it was a motion that was approved at Hull City Council in this form. The wording isn't, I purposely didn't change the wording really. And the bottom line about it is that part of the reason I brought it in front of you rather than taking it to scrutiny was to use the power of the democracy of this chamber. I feel that we just seem to come here and rubber stamp things, and it's really helpful to get all these views so that I can now take this back to overview and scrutiny and Overview and Scrutiny can put something forward that can actually go forward to either Council or Cabinet, trusting to the advice of our monitoring officer as the best way of doing it. But I will pause there because I think we've discussed this enough, and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you. We will now take the vote on the motion. All those in favour, please raise their hands. Thank you. All those against? Thank you. That put me as well. Any abstentions? One. We have a anomaly in the numbers. I do have to ask you to vote again. So once again, those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. Now raise your hands if you're voting against, please. Thank you. And those abstaining. Thank you. Thank you. The result of the vote is we have 4 votes in favour. We have 34 votes against, and we have 4 abstentions. So the motion is lost. Thank you. Okay. We now move on to, sorry. Oh yes, our Executive Director would like to speak to us. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Chair. Just to assist members, the first point is Councillor Hassel makes a very good point that around the country there may well be a motion that's in that format that is approved. Of course, councils have different constitutions, they have different members who make different decisions on what's before them. So simply because somewhere else in the country a motion has gone a different way doesn't mean that what this council is doing is in any way incorrect. It's just you're a different set of members with different objectives and potentially different corporate plan. There was reference to our land management policy as well. Different things engage the debate differently. And secondly, if I may also say, any member wishes to put forward a motion and is in any way uncertain, the Democratic Services team are always on hand to offer any assistance and support in doing that. And indeed, the 3 statutory officers are also, and indeed do, provide commentary on draft motions that are provided to assist a motion author and indeed their proposed seconder. So I want you to have that assurance from your officers. The support and guidance is there. In terms of training, the Democratic Services team are just trying to secure the next member development panel. in terms of training opportunities for members. So again, those of you that are on the member development panel, please, if you do wish to raise any training requirements linked to the Constitution, use that forum to bring that forward, because we're more than happy to support and facilitate training for members if there's a desire for that. So I think that was just helpful following that debate to share those observations with you to assist going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 7, questions to members of the Cabinet. We're now moving to the item where councillors can ask questions to members of the Cabinet. Before we start this item, may I remind you all that the questions must be relevant to matters which the council has powers or duties, must not relate to an item.
Carry on, Chair.
Yeah. Must not relate to an item which is included elsewhere on the council agenda, since they can be raised at that point of the meeting. Sorry, Councillor Gray, what's going on? Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Should be limited to obtaining information or pressing for action. Must not divulge or require to be divulged confidential or exempt information, and must not exceed 2 minutes in duration. I would also like to remind you that if you would like to take the opportunity to ask a supplementary question, please ensure that these are raised through the chair and not directed directly to the executive councillor. Could members also please keep their questions and answers brief and succinct to allow full participation of members. We would like to keep this to 30 minutes, if we may, as against 15 minutes previously. Are there any questions? Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. My question for Councillor Taylor. Today I've watched trees being planted, improving the environment in St Neots as part of the Queen's Green Canopy project, which obviously started a few years ago. The late Queen has gone, but the project continues to improve our environments. And I'd like to ask Councillor Taylor if she hasn't already seen the admirable work done by the Ops Committee in conjunction and partnership with the Town Council in St Neots and the County Council to improve the environment. Please would she have a look at what they've done, because it's an amazing job.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. I haven't seen it, no. So when I go out next on my cycle, I will definitely go and have a look round there. You'll always see me out walking, sometimes running, but certainly on my cycle. But so I will definitely go, and I applaud the collaboration work through the different councils as well. Thank you, Councillor Chapman.
Councillor Gledo, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question actually might fall between two stools, so I'm not sure if it's Councillor Ferguson or Councillor Wakeford. I'm speaking actually tonight as a St Ives South member. We've noticed an increase in the number of homeless people that are actually in temporary accommodation. And I would like to know what the council's actually doing about trying to mitigate this very serious issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
So this is definitely me. So it is indeed a serious issue as well. I was talking to one of the leading members of Three Pillars, which is a charity feeding the homeless, and they're saying that the levels of homelessness he's experiencing in Peterborough are reaching kind of endemic levels. Not so much in Huntingdonshire yet, but it's a risk. That's a metric that we track as part of our quarterly reporting, and we always take the trouble to say that it's a really important indicator. The way we try and keep that number down, well, there's two ways we can try, and I think we're going to talk about this later perhaps, is one way is we need to bring more, we did talk about in Cabinet the other night, we need to bring more affordable houses online, because that's the most effective way of getting people out of temporary accommodation. But also the homelessness team works really hard to get upstream with the problem and prevent people from being made homeless in the first place. Now, obviously, that's something we don't have full control of, but wherever possible, we try and help people stay in their own homes. And so we advise people to reach out as soon as they have the first inkling that they might be made homeless. So it is a significant problem. We have been tracking numbers. They went up a bit in the previous quarter, then dropped a bit in the last quarter. I haven't talked to John Collins about numbers for this quarter yet, but I will reach out to him this week and find out, because not only is it a risk for the people who are involved, because homelessness is awful, temporary accommodation is better, but not much better, but it's also a risk for the council because it costs us lots of money to keep those people in temporary accommodation. So in terms of my risks and things I most, and I've talked to our managing director about this frequently, and our Section 151 officers, one of the risks I'm most scared of is that number, not only because of the human cost, but because of the financial cost to the council. So we are aware of it. I'm not aware of the exact figures, but I will check with the team tomorrow and find out exactly if there has been an uptick, because it's something we need to react to as best as we can immediately. Thank you.
Councillor Charlotte Lowe.
Thank you. This is for Councillor Sanderson. It was regarding the local plan consultations. I received numerous complaints from residents that the online forms were too difficult to fill in. They made no sense and so many were struggling with them. When residents called the contact centre, they were advised the only way to register their comments was via the online form. So I think there's a lot of views that won't have been recorded, unfortunately. And even I struggled to fill in the online forms, and I think I'm usually IT literate. Thankfully, I emailed my comments in and informed residents to write in or email their views to the local plan team. However, not all residents in the district knew this, and it's a lost opportunity to get the best return percentages for a local plan. Others who attended the drop-in sessions were disappointed that they weren't area specific and that they had to wade through all the paperwork. Can we please ensure that future drop-in sessions are bespoke to the area they're being held in and in various parts of the district, not just in the towns? The online form for the next consultation must come back to overview and scrutiny with as much time as possible to ensure its user-friendliness and that our NANs can fill in. We have the opportunity to improve responses from residents and get full involvement if we can slow down the process a bit. Not having 3 planning consultations as well as all the others running at the same time would really help residents and in turn HDC. Residents also advised that there was too much information to take in. They didn't understand it, and unfortunately conspiracy theories start, that it was complicated on purpose so that people wouldn't respond. Can you assure us there will be a guide or flowchart to assist residents completing the online form, along with supplying a specific email and postal address? My question is, do you have the number of online forms that were started but not completed? And how can we improve the number of responses we get for the next consultation? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Lowe, for that very thorough question, which you did actually, which you also did give me advance notice on. So I think it's fair to say that there have been some issues with this. I've had some feedback myself. We use a company called Objective to run the online consultation, and we have already given them feedback on the challenges faced by some people when trying to use the consultation system. They've already undertaken to look at these issues and provide us with an update on what they feel went right, what went wrong, level of responses, etc. There were some common issues where compatibility of mobile phones and activation emails, they weren't working. We've been using this company since 2005, but I think given the increase in new users to the system and the change of habits, etc., it's something that I think we do need to review. I don't think it would have been practical to have a bespoke exhibition, if you like, at various locations because it's a local plan for the whole district. Obviously, people going to, and it wasn't just the towns, they were obviously Kimbolton and Sawtry as well as the other towns, also give them an opportunity to comment on the district as a whole. And in fact, we did encourage people and did say to people, you don't have to read all of it, you don't have to respond to all of the local plan if you don't want to. But I appreciate there was a lot of information there. And it wasn't the case that we wanted to make it too complicated for people, far from it. But we did have a total of 5,469 responses, around 210 unprocessed emails, which the team will be going through. They'll have to validate that. That generated multiple comments. We had 2 petitions. We had 387 signatures from Hale Weston and another 91 from Sibson. And in fact, the responses, I thought, were, from what we know, are far higher than those for previous local plan consultations, almost 5,000 more actually than at the last stage of the last local plan that we did. So I think the large volume of responses is a tribute to the planning team. It's to local members as well and to their parish councils for also engaging with the public
Could you,
and the communities. And I appreciate
sum
that
up?
many of the responses that may be complicated, but I'll certainly take all that back and report to colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gray, please.
Thank you very much. I might offer a third or an alternative reason why there were a lot of responses. This is a question for Councillor Sanderson. So fresh from her, shall we say, slightly calamitous media round on Sunday, Angela Rayner is going to be standing up tomorrow to give us her guidance on the National Planning Policy Framework. And it's going to be very interesting because already it's very clear that more homes are going to need to be delivered. And I would suggest that one of the reasons why we've got a lot of responses is that a lot of local people are concerned about housing development in this area. So I would like to know, given that a number of local authorities have already come out against these increased housing targets, suggesting that the government is setting them up to fail, what's his view of this?
Councillor Sanderson.
Well, firstly, I'm pleased to have a record in building affordable homes, in complying with the current NPPF. The new one will result in us having higher targets. That's not a great surprise. It'll be around, I think, 1,300. At the moment, it's around 800. So there will be that difference. What we've also got to be very careful of is meeting targets and ensuring that we don't fall back into tilted balance. That's the danger here if we don't comply with government legislation. I understand people's concerns about it. I spoke to Councillor Howe, for example, who fed back to me that residents in Yaxley were worried about the amount of potential development. Of course, local plans not dealing with that particularly at this stage. We don't have firm plans for a lot of these sites, but people are concerned, and Councillor Gray is correct. That's why they're responding. So we know our targets will be hard. They will be a lot higher, but I'm confident that we can meet them. But I will listen to Ms Rayner's report in Parliament with interest. Thank you.
Councillor Martin. Ross Martin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Question to the executive leader. And later in the agenda, we're going to have an item talking about residential properties and council tax penalty, should we say, if a house remains empty for too long, because obviously we want to have these homes occupied and on the market. But that doesn't include business premises. Now, under the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act 2023, councils, as from the 2nd of December, can use the high street rental auctions. Does the Executive Councillor intend to bring a paper through the democratic cycle on this? Thank you.
Chair, if you'd forgive me for not standing, please. I don't wish to offend council, but I've still got very sore knees. But in fact, with your indulgence, Councillor Martin, actually, I think Councillor Wakeford might be better. There might be a fight behind me as to who thinks they might be a better place to answer this. But if you'd indulge me, perhaps we'd let them answer. And then if you would like me to come back in after that, I would be very pleased to.
Councillor Wakeford.
It doesn't like me. There we go. Third time lucky. If there were hands as well behind me, I missed them. Thank you. So, yes, members may have noted aspirant parliamentary candidates in Huntingdonshire criticising this council before the last election for not having used the powers under the Levelling Up Act as it came, termed high street rental auctions. And of course, that was because they weren't lawful yet. The previous government created the scope for doing them, but hadn't implemented the secondary legislation, the sort of boring but important bit of governing. Now they are in force. The new government has brought them in. We are going to be looking with interest at the opportunities that they provide us. Obviously, there are advantages and disadvantages to different levels of usage of them, and we're certainly going to be considering them in line with our priorities. So watch this space would be my straight answer, but certainly my thanks to Mr. Gove for having put us ahead of the game in being able to have access to this power.
Thank you. Councillor Jenkins. Oh.
Sorry, Chair, can I come back on a supplementary to that?
Yeah, please
Thank you
do.
very much for that answer, Councillor Wakeford. Can you give us a timeline on this? I know for residents in Huntingdon, St Benedict's Court is very much being felt like it's pulling back a town that is actually thriving and moving forward. I know Bid Huntingdon and Paul Sweeney are doing a fantastic job. So the faster we can get a proposal, obviously it's got to be right and it's got to be proportioned and reasoned for our area, but the faster we can get it in and we can then act on it, the better. So can you give us a timeline on when we're likely to see this come through the democratic system? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wakeford.
No, I can't on the spot give you a timeline or give the councillor a timeline. Forgive me through you, Chair. I'd remind Councillor Martin that he is welcome to give us a heads up about questions in advance if he does want us to seek to do little work to prepare a more direct answer. But off the cuff, I'm not going to commit us to any particular timescale, but I will say I trust his colleague and employer, I think, wouldn't mind me saying in the context of, indeed, Huntingdon bid meetings with Paul Sweeney, I have had discussions with him with reference to these powers already. So I am genuinely hopeful that it'll be a useful tool in our armoury. It's not something that you can overuse, because that may be dissuasive to investment into properties in the first place. We don't want to be counterproductive, but it's definitely, as I said in my initial answer, a useful power to have. So no, I can't commit to a timescale and don't think it would be helpful or appropriate to commit arbitrarily to one. But we are happy to commit to considering how best to use these now the new government has brought them into force.
Thank you. Councillor Jenkins. Jennings, sorry, not Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for the Executive Council for Waste, Street Scene and all the other things. And it's about the Christmas tree doorstep recycling programme that's coming up, which is raising money for the East Anglian Children's Hospice. The notes on the hanger and accompanying notes are slightly ambiguous, so I wonder whether you'd be able to clarify whether the Christmas tree collections are available only to those who've subscribed to the Green Bin collection service, or whether they're open to all residents.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
So, right, Chair. So there was information on the bin hangers. Is this what you are talking about? Yeah. So this is, I can't remember exactly the charity involved, but it was to do with the artificial Christmas trees, wasn't it? I thought it was the artificial. Please leave that with me and let me get some clarification on this. If through you, Chair. Let me look at the clarification on that.
Councillor Jennings.
Yeah, I think it's just the when they collect the real Christmas trees, and before there was a subscription service, they used to just go out next to the green bin. But the hangers on the bins are slightly ambiguous about whether it's only going to be available to those who have subscribed to the green bin service, or whether, given that it actually is ending up making money for charity, whether the service is actually available to anybody, whether they've subscribed or not. So just a clarification on who is allowed to leave a Christmas tree, a real Christmas tree out on the first green bin collection day after the new year.
Okay. Councillor Debbie Mickleborough, please.
Thank you very much. I've got a question for Councillor Sanderson regarding the call for sites. So my parish councils would like to know if all the call for sites were included in the recent consultation as the deadline was extended. If they were not all processed in time, will parishes and town councils have sight of them? And how will this impact on the preferred call for sites consultation?
Well, thank you, Chair. The original call for sites ran from 29th of March 2023 to the 7th of June. And following this, we received multiple inquiries about the possibility of submitting additional sites. So in response to that, the planning team opened an ongoing call for sites on the 1st of October, and that runs until the 31st of December this year. So there were 16 sites submitted up to the 30th of June, which were included in the LAA land assessments, which was recently published, of course. And for sites received since the 1st of July, they'll be addressed using the usual methodology. So I'll have a separate public consultation, so we'll be doing this again. And there'll be a new process, so communities will have their say before the preferred options draft local plan is issued. Sites that were discounted when LPAG went through the process, they're actually still in all the documents. So as well as those that were brought forward, there were some that obviously were excluded because they were felt to be inappropriate. And they obviously are in the pack, that those 4,000 pages that went to scrutiny. So members are free to look at those. Thank you.
Councillor Tevlin, please.
Thank you. Another question for Councillor Sanderson. Would like to know the latest planning figures for planning. Also, my parish have been on at me around getting feedback on the methodology that was put forward by Wilf and Stanton. We'll happily take a written response on that. But for any other parishes as well, wanting feedback on their methodology as part of the local plan, I'd welcome this. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair. Councillor Tevlin actually gave me advance notice of this question. I don't actually carry these stats in my head, so I did look them up. But I'm pleased to say that 89.7% of major applications were processed on time, against a target of 82%. Minor applications slightly actually below that 82%, so it is something that we need to improve on. Household applications are almost at 97% on time, and that's against a target of 87%. Backlog cases over 16 weeks without a time extension. Up to November, there were 70 of those against a target of 75. So again, I think just within target, but room for improvement. Happy to take back any questions about methodology to any parish councillors, to Fen Stanton or anywhere else if members need them. Thank you.
Thank you. If no one else wishes to speak, we'll move on to the next item. Community Health and Wealth Strategy Delivery Fund. Can I ask Councillor Convoy? It was meant to be Councillor Pitt, but unfortunately he cannot be with us tonight. So I'm asking Councillor Convoy to present the report and propose the recommendations within it, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And again, please excuse me, colleagues, for not standing. The new needs that are due in the new year will be very, very grateful for. So I'm going to present the report that Councillor Pitt would have put before you tonight, and then obviously we will move into debate. So the Community Health and Wealth Building Strategy Principles came to overview and scrutiny as a work in progress on the 11th of July 2024. It was refined following feedback from Overview and Scrutiny and community co-production workshops, and presented again to Overview and Scrutiny on the 5th of September and to Cabinet then on the 10th of September. Today it comes to Council for adoption of the strategy and approval of the creation of a £750,000 fund to deliver its objectives. This work started life as an open question amongst Cabinet colleagues and officers. What does it mean to have a good quality of life? Improving the quality of life for local people is priority one of our corporate plan, and ultimately it underpins everything we do as a council. It's a useful litmus test each time we make a decision. What's the net benefit to the people that we serve? But we can go further. Where might we focus our attention and look for new opportunities to create positive, meaningful, enduring and measurable impact? What if we ignored our own procedures and preoccupations for a moment and thought about the people who live and work in Huntingdonshire? What do they want, not just from the council, but out of life? Through a series of discussions and research, we identified 3 core themes: economic resilience, social connection, and physical and mental health. We don't propose that these are the only measures of the quality of life, but we do believe that they're powerful and universal. Money doesn't buy happiness, but it is hard to be content if you're worrying about paying the bills or what would happen if your washing machine broke down. Social connection doesn't necessarily mean a busy social life. It might also mean having a support network, knowing there's a friend's door you can knock on in an emergency. Physical and mental health are the cornerstone of well-being. Our next challenge was to identify opportunities to have meaningful impact at scale across our district. Economic resilience developed into a focus on employment and skills. It's an area we already operate in via our community development and economic development teams, but we know there's much more that could be done. Economic resilience also led us to look at community wealth building, an established set of principles and strategies for ensuring that the economic activity benefits local people by retaining wealth within our communities. Social connection is another area where we already operate via our community development team, our community chest grants and our track record in working with community organisations. Health is a vast topic that goes way beyond the influence of this council. However, increased physical activity is well documented as a means of improving both physical and mental health. It's another area in which this council has experience with our leisure centres, our active lifestyles programmes, our parks, our nature reserves and our other open spaces. Physical activity is a prime example of preventative health, the basic premise that it's far better, both for people and public sector budgets, to keep people healthy rather than support them in poor health. These 3 themes overlap and reinforce each other. People who are socially isolated or living in poverty are more likely to suffer poor health. Conversely, someone who joins a sports club or a walking group will enjoy new social connections as their health improves. One of the recommendations of the May 2024 corporate peer review was the need to properly resource the delivery of Huntingdonshire Future Strategy. The Community Health and Wellbeing Strategy speaks directly to 3 of the 5 themes of that strategy, namely pride in place, inclusive economy, and health embedded. Some outcomes can be delivered with relatively minimal resource by changing how we do things. For example, by adapting our procurement policy to acknowledge the importance of local spend and encouraging other organisations to do the same. Other parts of this strategy require resource in order to have a meaningful impact, and that's why we're proposing establishing this new delivery fund to support the strategy. This is made possible by exceptional interest rates on our savings that weren't anticipated when this year's budgets were set. This windfall, this one-off windfall, is proposed to be treated in a similar way to a sovereign wealth fund, using one-off funding to establish long-lasting benefits for people. The longevity of these benefits are built on the premise of co-production with our strategic partners. Our friends working in health have a statutory duty to invest in preventative health initiatives, but this is hard for them to design and deliver and evidence when they're at the coalface of primary care. This strategy and fund not only provides the apparatus and evidence base to deliver on their as well as our own objectives, But by inviting them in to co-design the process, we hope to create and deliver a health model with our health partners, and one that they will wish to fund on an enduring basis. Co-production also means talking to local people. They understand better than anyone their own motivations and barriers to rewarding employment, good health, and supportive local connections. That's why the design of specific interventions starts with conversations with local people. We've already made good progress on this with workshops in July, September, and November. These conversations have been powerful, not just in their subject matter, but also in the way that this council communicates with local people. We are committed to evidencing impact. Not everything will work first time, but we will deploy tried and tested social value measurement tools to ensure the strategy proves its worth as it evolves. It's rare for a local authority to have the opportunity to try something new, particularly at this scale and with this scale of ambition. We hope that members recognise its value, its potential, and support this recommendation. So before you tonight in the papers are 2 recommendations: to approve the proposed community health and wealth building strategy, and then the second recommendation is to approve the creation of a £750,000 delivery fund for use over the next 3 years to support the delivery of the community health and wealth-being, and that's when my computer's decided to close down, wealth-being strategy, noting the intention to bring detailed proposals on the mechanics of the operation to the overview and scrutiny panel for further input and review. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the recommendation, please? Councillor Davenport-Ray, thank you. I now open the topic up for debate. Thank you. Who would like to speak? Councillor Martin.
Thank you very much, Chair. And may I start just say that I will be supporting this motion tonight, or this proposal tonight, but I do have a couple of concerns and a couple of things that I'd like to just run through. So the principle of improving health, fostering economic resilience, and strengthening social connections are undoubtedly vital to the quality of life of residents in Huntingdonshire. These are admirable goals, and I'm glad to see them committed to be addressed in this proposal. That being said, I must be honest that if I had £750,000 to spend for the benefit of Huntingdonshire residents, this isn't necessarily how I would choose to allocate it, especially as we are locking up money today to be spent over the next 3 years. The ambition of this strategy, while commendable, must be balanced against the need for the needs of the community and transparency in demonstrating value for money. Because let us not forget, this money has been found from an underspend from their budget, the total underspend being over £2 million, the same budget which includes an increase in council tax by the absolute maximum, and delivering the largest cut in this council's service cut in this council's history. However, we are where we are, and we must focus on making the best of this proposal. Delivery will be key. For this fund to succeed, there must be stringent accountability measures. Clear KPIs need to be established from the offset. These should not only track the output of this fund, it should also track the number of projects delivered and the number of community members engaged, but also the outcomes. What improvements have we seen of physical activity level? What increase of employment do we have? And what enhanced social connectivity does this fund bring? Furthermore, the reporting of these KPIs must be regular, transparent, and accessible. Quarterly updates through the democratic system and the public will ensure trust and allow us to pivot if the strategy is not delivering what has been promised. Most critically, we must maintain flexibility to withdraw or reallocate these funds if it becomes clear that the long-term benefits are not being materialised. Now, this is not a critique of the strategy or the vision itself, but initiatives like community co-production, progressive procurement, and partnership are innovative approaches that align with modern thinking in local government. But without clear results, they risk being seen as an experiment at the taxpayer's expense. to conclude, Mr. Chairman, sorry. Spending too much time down in Westminster, I've written too many parliamentary speeches. Mr. Chairman, while I'm cautious about the initial decision to create this fund, I support efforts in implementing it effectively. Let's ensure that every pound is spent from this fund creating a meaningful and measurable impact, helping us build a healthier, more connected and resilient Huntingdonshire for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Gray, please.
Very good speech. Thank you very much, which I will completely echo. So I've just probably a couple of questions, really, because it looks to me like we're sort of approving in-year expenditure. I'm getting nods from the Chief Executive, an in-year change to the budget that we've got in front of us here. So that's good. I've clarified that particular point there. I worry, to be honest, this is not a sovereign wealth fund. Let's not pretend that it is. It's investment into all sorts of social elements of it. And that's where my concern really aligns with Councillor Martin's, because there's lots of good ideas and lots of very positive stuff here, but there's not very much detail about the governance of it. We're spending £750,000 worth of taxpayers' money. We're going to approve the starting of this evening. I would lay very good money on the fact that it's going to get approved this evening. And the next steps are to develop a policy to represent to members. Is that coming back to here as full council, or is it going to a scrutiny panel? Is it being approved by the Cabinet? So I don't know at the moment. You're asking me to approve the expenditure of £750,000, and I don't know the mechanism by which this is going to be carried out. Is it an executive councillor? Is it going to the grants committee? Yes, let's have a report into scrutiny, but the report into scrutiny is going to be a rear view mirror report of things that have already happened. Are we investing in capital here? Are we investing in revenue? Are we propping up things that may not be necessarily that effective? To me, there are still quite a lot of gaps in here, and I wouldn't expect us to be approving to spend £750,000 with some rather fundamental governance gaps still in front of us, and just say to the Cabinet, it's okay, lads and lasses, you rock on and spend the money, create a framework, and we'll follow in behind you. So I have some reservations about the timing and the preparedness of what's in front of us this evening.
Councillor Corley, please. Corley, yeah. Yeah, Stephen Corley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question, really, I basically support what both of my colleagues have said. I do want to support this because I think it is the right thing to do, and I remember being part of the discussion within scrutiny. But we now know that we have a, what was it, £2 million underspend. We're going to spend £750,000 on this. Can I be assured that, given all the previous warnings we've had from the Joint Administration about the so-called black hole, that the rest of this, what is the rest of this money going to be doing? Is it going to sort that black hole, or are we going to continue spending as we have done in this proposal? Thank you.
Councillor Davenport-Ray.
This is, as the seconder, I've reserved the right to speak until the end. The first thing I would do is bring my colleagues' attention to the top of page 2 of the report, which explains central to this fund will be open governance and transparent reporting of both spend and impact, subject to approval of the creation. A detailed paper outlining the mechanics of the operation will be brought back to overview and scrutiny for review. This will build on the principles presented in this paper. So I hope that gives you some confidence in the route that this will come back to you, which I think is very important. But I just wanted to think upon something that I think Councillor Pitt would say if he was here this evening. Residents are the experts in their own lives. And so it's really important that we ask them what they think we ought to be using these funds for. And that's really one of the central tenets of this program. By asking groups that demographically represent our population, we'll get the answers to that question. Urban people, rural people, young people, old people. The focus groups have been very specifically targeting percentages that match our population. But some of my colleagues have talked a lot about the health aspects of this work. To me, it's really the community wealth aspects that are even more important. So our local economy is built upon the bedrock of small business owners, self-employed people, and sole traders. And as an anchor institution in the vocabulary of community wealth building, we need to be leading the way on expecting our investors to invest in local businesses, and when wealth is created locally, to be spending that wealth back into our local economy. When this first came to scrutiny, the example of a Hinchingbrook Hospital rebuild was used. So can we, through this work with our health colleagues, encourage them to use local suppliers, and when they need to employ new people, to ask us for help in building the skills in our population so that local people can take up those jobs. So for me, it's really the community wealth aspects that are most encouraging, and that's why I will be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Wakeford.
Thank you. Am I still in order if that was Councillor Devonport-Ray's
Thank you.
reserved right?
In that
Happy
case,
to
I'll move
speak
on
if
to
I am.
Councillor Hassel, please.
Oh.
Sorry, what's happened? I don't get it. Sam, can you repeat that again, please?
Sorry, I wasn't brought debate to the end, turning to Councillor Devonport-Ray, having reserved a right to speak, or if she was just coming in midway through. If I'm in order, I'll contribute, but if not, I won't.
Thank you. Councillor Hassel does wish to speak, so sorry. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Wakeford, please.
Thank you. I was purely going to come in with reference to comments made about budgetary implications, because I'm pleased that we've got the proposal we have before us. I'm also really pleased with the cross-party interest and support. I think a lot of the concerns, as Councillor Devonport-Ray rightly flagged, will be picked up in the paper on the governance process that is coming through scrutiny into cabinet. I think the phrase made around the black hole with sceptical reference, I think, if I may, just suggests to me it might be valuable to recap, of course, that we know that there was one, and the reason we have addressed. The reason we have been able to address it and be in a position where we've got this scale of underspend is because we made a difficult decision to do that. And of course, the reason this is an underspend compared with budget is because we were careful in planning what level of income we anticipated to get from that. And of course, we were warned that we should expect even less, and that the income generation expectations were unrealistically high, and instead it's come in ahead of those targets, and that's why we're in a position to be able to make this decision. So that's the context. As for other budgetary matters, I think we can look forward to the budget coming through a little later this council year.
Thank you, Councillor Hassel.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I'm familiar with this and actually very positive about this particular initiative, because I spent a lot of time with Oliver Morley, talking through this whole thing at length. And I guess I just wanted to raise a few concerns. So I think we've said that the council is likely to approve this, but just some words of caution is that when I talked through with Oliver, he was extremely vocal about the need to get partners involved. My point being is although 750k seems to be a lot of money spread over 3 years, in order with the ambition of what we want to do is try and do more prevention rather than cure, it's really absolutely vital that we get that partnership funding, particularly from the NHS. I think Oliver talked about just picking up 0.5%, 1% of the NHS budget would help us enormously. And so my fear is that we don't get that funding. I was concerned at scrutiny about the lack of success criteria. Hopefully that is going to be addressed. The point of whether funds could be better spent, so what it was compared with. And also from my experience at the Combined Authority, where they do have employment and skills initiatives, which have not really been that successful. So the fear is that I think points have already been made that I really, really want this to be successful because I think it could change people's lives. But I'm also concerned that if we don't have good success criteria, we don't have good project management, we won't be successful. So please move forward with caution.
Thank you. May I ask if Councillor Conboy would like to sum up, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I thank colleagues for their thoughts and reflections? And can I also reassure colleagues, we have a pre-scrutiny model here in Huntingdonshire, which I'm very grateful for. This is coming back to overview and scrutiny so that you can scrutinise that process. That's part of the recommendation before you this evening. So I hope that will give you assurance. We've had a debate already this evening around the value of overview and scrutiny, so I'm looking forward to them getting their teeth stuck into this and making sure that there is good governance. The transparency that they seek is there because it should be. That's an essential part of what we do as an authority. And I agree that those key performance indicators need to be robust and they need to be visible so that you have assurance. I'm also particularly minded, and I would thank my colleagues from the opposition and the leader particularly about that need to be adept and to reflect on what we try and whether in fact it does what we're expecting it to do. It may do more than we're expecting it to, or it may do something very unusual that we're not expecting. It may not deliver. So one of our real challenges will be able to be swift and adept to make sure that we make the very best of this fund. It is a one-off opportunity and we need to spend it very wisely. We do need to ensure it's value for money. We need to ensure it makes a genuine difference to our residents. So I would thoroughly encourage overview and scrutiny to flex its muscles as per the debate we had earlier this evening. And I hope that councillor colleagues will be able to support the recommendation before you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Conboy. I'd now like to move to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation, please raise your hands.
Can I make a point of order, please? Are we voting on both recommendations together or separately? Thank you.
Both. Those against, please show your hands. And any abstentions, please. The motion is carried. Thank you. Or rather, the recommendation is carried. Thank you. I'd now like to move to a comfort break, please. And I would like to see everybody sat back again by 9:05, please. Thank you.
Alconbury World and St Neots East, where I live, there is a huge amount of house building, and East of England is the fastest growing part of the country. There are other solutions, I think. According to the 2021 census, there are 1.62 million vacant properties in England and Wales. 1.35 million of those are properly empty, not furnished, while the rest are being used as second homes or holiday homes. That number is also growing. In the last 5 years, the number of long-term vacant homes has raised by about 10%. And this has a number of negative consequences. Reduced housing supply drives up local prices, especially in the rental market, making it difficult for people to enter the property market. This contributes to the housing crisis and, to a certain extent, to economic stagnation. In areas where there are a large number of empty houses, it can contribute to neighbourhood decline and reduce community cohesion. And obviously, empty properties are also easy targets for crime in terms of vandalism, arson and squatting, which reduces community safety. When you consider that there are currently 1.3 million people on the social housing waiting list in England and Wales, and there are 1.35 million unfurnished empty properties in the country, it's easy to conclude that making more of these homes habitable would go some way, although obviously the whole way, to easing the housing crisis. So previously, the 1992 Local Government Finance Act provided us with some measures to reduce the number or to deal with the number of empty properties in the district. And previously, this council has opted to remove discounts for certain unoccupied properties and to charge an additional premium on dwellings that have been left empty and unfurnished for 2 years or more. The Levelling Up and Regeneration Act 2023 provides councils with powers to introduce stiffer penalties against owners of largely empty properties. It gives HDC the opportunity to charge the empty homes premium sooner, so after 1 year rather than 2, and also gives us new powers to charge a premium for second homes in Huntingdonshire. So this motion specifically asks the following. It's number one is to amend the existing empty homes premium to charge the additional 100% council tax premium after 1 year of the conditions being met rather than the current 2 years, with effect from 1st of April 2026. To approve the introduction of a second homes premium of 100% with the effect from the 1st of April 2026, and to provide delegated authority for the Section 151 officer in conjunction with the Executive Council for Resident Services and Corporate Performance, which is currently me, to adopt a policy setting out exceptions to the premiums in line with any regulations or guidance issued by central government, and to make subsequent updates to the policy as and when required. And finally, to agree to update the number of, to provide an update on the number of properties falling under the scheme to be reported back into democratic cycle once new policies have been in place for 12 months. So before proposing this motion, I want to acknowledge the contribution of the ONS panel who heard this, and particularly Councillor Bywater, who made the rather excellent point, I think, is that not all empty homes are empty because of the choice. There's lots of people, lots of reasons why homes might be legitimately empty, and I think we need to travel very carefully and act compassionately when we determine the exceptions and discounts. So Councillor Bywater and that ONS panel, I think, kindly offered to help me review any exceptions and discounts we might make so that we can act compassionately. So that's an offer which I'll kindly accept, and I'd like to move the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone like to second the recommendation, please? Councillor Conboy, thank you very much. I now open it up for discussion on the floor. Thank you very much. Councillor Ross-Martin, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Councillor Ferguson. While I neither stand in favour or opposed to this proposal, I believe it's essential to evaluate its potential impact to ensure that any policy is both effective and equitable. At its core, the proposal seeks to incentivise the use of empty homes, which is positive, and manage the growing number of second homes in our district, which can have a significant impact for housing availability and affordability, as Councillor Ferguson mentioned. Encouraging these properties to be brought back onto the market is aligned with the goals of community vibrance and efficient use of land. However, it is crucial to approach this with a nuanced perspective that considers local context. Firstly, the proposal shifts to implement a 100% premium on empty homes after 1 year instead of 2. This may create a strong incentive for property owners to act promptly, Similarly, introducing a 100% premium on second homes could discourage the proliferation in areas where housing availability is a concern. Yet we must also ask ourselves, will these measures achieve the intended outcomes without unintended consequences? Will they truly encourage owners to put properties back into use? Or could this inadvertently create financial strain for those unable to comply due to genuine reasons such as probate or legal complexities? Now, I welcome Councillor Ferguson offering to work with Councillor Bywater and others on the potential exceptions, but I would have liked to have seen that included within recommendation 3. I do believe that recommendation 3 requires closer scrutiny. The delegated authority is set exemptions based on policy in line with any regulations or guidance issued by central government. This is just a practical mechanism. However, I urge this council not to limit their exceptions strictly to central guidance. There must be a hyperlocal or local factors unique to Huntingdonshire that warrant consideration. For example, rural areas may face specific challenges related to seasonal employment, heritage properties, or policies around probate. Incorporating with flexibility for locally defined exceptions will ensure fairness and prevent undue hardship on residents facing genuine barriers. Additionally, I support inclusion of recommendation 4, requiring a report back through the democratic cycle after 12 months of implementation. I'd also urge that we get a breakdown of any exceptions that we accept and within which criteria they fall under, so we can monitor those as well, so that we can add more exceptions or remove some as we see fit. In conclusion, this proposal has potential, but its successes hinges on a thoughtful implementation, robust monitoring, and flexibility to address local nuances. Let's proceed with caution, ensuring that these measures are not just another layer of taxation, but a step towards more sustainable and equitable housing market in Huntingdonshire. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hodgson-Jones, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fortunately, I don't own a second property within Huntingdonshire and therefore didn't have to declare any interests. But I look at the second homes aspect of this, and I fear that we're focused on people who own a second home for their own use within Huntingdon. What we're not picking up, and which creates an anomaly and a potential distortion in the market, is that if a landlord lets a property to a tenant who actually has their principal home elsewhere, then they are using the property in Huntingdon as a second home. Who then becomes liable for a premium, or is any premium chargeable on that property? And how would we find out? And is the onus on the landlord or the council or the tenant to notify that liability? And I think that there are other aspects which haven't been thought through, the unintended consequences of this scheme. And we should not be bringing forward proposals that penalise people for owning property as opposed to those people who rent properties for their purposes to avoid having to buy a property and pay a premium on it. And I would like some clarification on that as part of the reporting in this proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Nathan Hunt, please.
Thank you, Chair. There is no beating around the bush. There is a housing crisis in Britain, and Huntingdonshire is not immune from its effect. Just look at the headlines earlier today. Housing costs and rent payments are going through the roof. According to Zoopla, the national average rent has gone up over £3,200 in the past 3 years, vastly outpacing wage growth. And here in the east of England over the past year, the average rent has gone up by 5.4%, well above inflation and squeezing residents' pockets further and further. We experience the effects of this crisis locally, which will disproportionately affect the young. People my age will be lucky if we are ever able to own our own homes. And this crisis has come about from a long time, both from a lack of supply, with the previous Conservative National Government repeatedly failing to hit its house building targets, and from the rise of the number of empty properties, with LGA analysis showing that the number of long-term empty homes increased nationally by nearly 10% between 2018 and 2023, totaling over 1% of the whole housing stock in England at that time. Encouraging empty properties into use by reducing the time taken for the empty home premium to apply and placing a council tax premium on second homes are two of the levers that the council can pull to alleviate this crisis. They are not the whole solution, but they are part of a viable solution. This policy does also, as stated, have a scope for relief where there are legitimate concerns for a home being empty. These steps are common sense steps in a part of a wider response, and I'm pleased to see that the administration is taking them. I'm also pleased that a report back to the Environment, Communities and Partnership Scrutiny Panel, which was suggested by me and supported by the ONS panel at its November meeting, has been maintained as a recommendation in the paper before Council. This report will come a year after the policy has been in place, but it will give us a chance to scrutinise the positive impacts of this policy and see how we could go further to address these challenges. We have real power to act on part of this issue. I'm pleased that the Council is standing up to use this power for the benefit of Huntingdonshire's residents and for the benefit of Huntingdonshire's next generation. I urge councillors to vote in favour of the proposals this evening.
Councillor Ferguson, would you like to sum up, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just to address, so thank you for the debate and to address a few of the concerns. Councillor Martin mentioned some shortcomings in recommendation 3. The fact is we don't know what all the exemptions are. This is new legislation like the high street rental auctions that you mentioned earlier. Yeah, and so we're rather pioneering this at the same time as the government is declaring what some of those exemptions are. Now, some of the things you mentioned, like probate, are already accounted for in the current regulations and will be the new regulations. But I do commit to you, with the help of ONS, to make sure that we do treat all of these exemptions compassionately and fairly, so that nobody is unfairly taxed when they shouldn't be as well. So you have my commitment to do that. We could have brought this comes in two parts. The empty homes premium, we could have done that from April this year, but I think that would have been a bit premature. And to do this we can't do the second homes premium to April 2026, and to force this through really early wouldn't have given us enough time to understand all these exemptions and do the work up front. And I think it also would have confused residents having two separate premiums coming in separate times. So we decided to delay both of these to April 2026 so we can do the work up front. But I hear your concerns, and you have my commitment that we will address them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We will now move to a vote. We are taking the vote en bloc for the 4 recommendations. Those in favour, please raise your hands now. Thank you. The recommendations are carried. Thank you. Moving to item 10. Sorry, we'll just let our councillor friends return to their seats. Thank you.
Clarification, please, if I may, Chair. I think there may have been people who didn't vote. I don't wish to presume, but because I think you didn't move to those that voting against or abstentions.
Because it's just. I think I would simply just the next item. I would ask those who were indicated against or abstaining just to indicate again.
Because it's not like a motion.
Okay.
Really, it's not.
I think just for completeness.
Okay. Just for clarification, then. No.
If I may, thank you, Mr. Chair. When we vote on recommend, it's the nuance of the difference between a motion on debate and then a recommendation. So on that item, it was clearly carried. If members, so therefore we didn't do the normal vote, the abstentions and voting against. It was very clearly carried. If members would prefer to have been, because it's not a recorded vote, so nobody knows how you voted, which is obviously different for a recorded vote when it's very transparent who's voted what. So that was the distinction. And I think sometimes the confusion when we're in motions and then normal business, we get, which is back to the Councillor Davenport raise, early reserve the right to speak. When we're just in normal committee with what we would normally call reports, it's a slightly different approach. So if that helps. And then rather than send everyone back out, you're all back in now.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 10, Council Tax Support Scheme 25-26. Councillor Ferguson, can I invite you to present the report on the Council Tax Approval Scheme? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. You don't often get motions from me, but when you do, you get 3 at once, like London Buses. So I'll try and keep this one relatively short. So one of the principal objectives of this council is to improve the quality of life of our residents, preventing them from entering into crisis and helping those already in crisis to find themselves back out of it. Last year at this time, I stood in front of the council to propose a new council tax support scheme that was intended to increase the maximum amount of council tax support we were able to offer members of our community, those on the lowest incomes, from 80% up to 100%. And I'm very grateful that I had the support of most of the council on that motion in delivering this new scheme. I think these numbers speak for themselves and show that the revised scheme has been an unmitigated success, both in providing more support to those people who need it most and also cutting the red tape and bureaucracy required to provide that support. The headline figures from the first 5 months of the new scheme paint a very compelling picture. The number of households receiving 100% council tax support has increased under the revised scheme from 1,307 in March to 3,893 in August. That's almost tripled. By the end of August 2024, an additional 708 households now qualified for council tax support. And between April and August 2024, despite the increased caseload, council tax bills sent to CTS decreased by 10%, which is really important because people were receiving council tax bills which changed on a monthly basis, which made it very difficult for them to budget on their finances. The proportion of changes that we were able to process automatically rose from 30% in 2023 to 62.52% in 2024, so more than doubled. And the average number of days required to process changes in circumstances reduced from 8.78 days to 3.42 days. And I think really importantly, there's been an overall reduction in number of reminders and summons that we've had to issue in the first few months of the year. So we've issued 615 fewer reminders and 527 fewer court summons. And anybody who's ever been on the wrong end of a court summons or a bailiff's note will know that those are deeply distressing and can help propel people further into the spiral of debt. So my view is that this scheme has been a complete success. We've helped to provide more people in need. We've helped more people in need to claim more money more quickly and with less administrative burden. So tonight I'm asking the council to approve the recommendation that the scheme principles for the 25-26 remain unchanged, ensuring that the scheme continues to deliver support to low-income households across the district in line with our corporate priority to improve the quality of life for local people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Terry. We'll now open it up for debate on the floor. Thank you very much. Councillor Ross Martin.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you again, Councillor Ferguson, for that presentation. Again, I think reading the report, it's very promising to see some of the outcomes that we're receiving or that we're seeing from this new scheme that was brought in last year, or recommended last year, should we say. One of the things I'm fully in favour of trying to find the efficiencies, trying to make the process better, trying to make it easier for our residents. And we've got to remember that our residents are not only our residents, they're our customers, and they're also the people that put us here. So what I do think, moving more towards automation also removes some of the human element away from it. Now, I'm aware of situations in my ward which have now been resolved, where the postal service in our area has been lacking recently. So it's been 3 weeks. So from the point of the date on the letter to the date that they receive the letter has been 3 weeks. Then they spend time in hospital. So by the time they get back out of hospital, they've got to a stage where they're getting the court summons because we're now only having one reminder letter. this removes a lot of the human element that we had in there before, that had a look and saw, well, Mrs. Jones never always pays on time, is always up front, has never had an issue for 40 years, but she's had one issue, but we're going to send them a court summons anyway. That's what automation brings in, because they don't see the human behind some of these decision-making processes that we're putting in place. So I would urge that we take a step back and work out how many of these court summons could have been avoided by another follow-up or a different form of follow-up, especially when our postal system is not the greatest at the moment. You know, I only get mail once a week at the moment. So it is really, really bad at them. So I would ask you just to go away and reflect on that, and maybe try and find a way that we can introduce that human element into the automation and try and find a more stable and level balance, so we don't miss those residents that I've just mentioned. They get a summons because of late post and then ill health, because it adds more stress to them at a time where they really don't need that stress. Thank you very much, Chair.
Anyone else does anyone else wish to speak, please? Thank you. No, in that case, Councillor Ferguson, would you like to sum up, please?
So firstly, Councillor Martin, I understand and I acknowledge your concerns. I don't have a solution tonight, but I will talk to Katie Kelly, who runs these teams, and see what we can do about that aspect of people not receiving summons and reminders on time. I disagree with your description as our residents as customers. It's one of my bugbears, and we're not a corporation. We want to work with people. We don't want people to treat us like a corporation. But other than that, I agree with the points that you made. I just want to finish off by saying that when I first inherited this portfolio, this was brought to me by officers, and we had a very short amount of time to get it through. I didn't think they could do it. Katie Kelly took over the team really late and made this happen. And I think it's been fantastic for residents. It's been great for us in reducing our overheads as well. I got lots of credit for it. I got my face on the front page of the Hunts Post saying council abolishes council tax to the poor, but very little of that was due to me. It was mainly due to the Revs and Bens team. So I want to give them lots of credit for all the hard work they did getting this through on time. And this is entirely due to them. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to a vote. We will now move to a vote. Would all those in favour of the report and recommendations please raise their hands now? Thank you. That is unanimous, so it is carried. Thank you very much. Now moving on to item number 11, the Gambling Act of 2005, Statement of Principles. May I ask, can I invite the Chair of the Licensing Committee, Councillor Nick Wells, to present the report and propose the recommendation seeking approval for a revised Statement of Principles for the Council under the Gambling Act, the period 2025 to 2028. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Chair. So, as you mentioned, the Gambling Act 2005 requires the Council to prepare and publish a statement of principles stating how it will exercise its statutory duties, having first undertaken public consultation and considered its feedback. The current statement ends on the 30th of January 2025, so we were required to draw up, adopt and publish a further statement of principles before it's coming into effect on the 31st of January 2025. If the Council fails to do this, it will be unable to fulfil its statutory duties, with possible additional financial and legal consequences as a result. So the Council, having a statutory duty to approve and publish a statement of principles before the 3rd of January 2025, 4 weeks before it comes into effect on the 31st of January, in order to fulfil its legal obligations. Therefore, the committee recommends that the Council approve and adopt the Gambling Act 2025 Statement of Principles 2025 to 2028. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Do I have a seconder for the proposal, please? Councillor Gledo, thank you. Now throw the open to the floor for discussion. Thank you very much. Would anyone like to speak? No? In that case, we will move to a vote. Would all those in favour of the recommendation please raise your hands now? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. That's carried. Item number 12, Treasury Management 6-month review. Please turn to page 137 on your agenda. May I invite Councillor Micklebauer, who is there already, Executive Councillor for Finance and Resources, to present the 6-monthly update in respect of the Treasury Management activity, including investment and borrowing activity and Treasury performance. Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Micklebauer.
My knees will not forgive me bending over the microphone, and people won't hear me otherwise. So I'll stand here. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. This evening has seen a lot on the agenda, so I'm sure you'll be happy to hear that I've adjusted my report to make it as brief as I'm able. Tonight, I am presenting the 6-month Treasury Management Outturn Performance Review for the first half of financial year 2024-25, covering the period between the 1st of April 2024 and the 30th of September 2024. Little has changed. I could almost deliver this evening's update by replaying a recording of the last report 6 months ago. As a council, we've adopted the CIPFA, or Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy's Code of Practice for Treasury Management, which mandates semi-annual and annual reports that set out our Treasury performance and other key indicators for the financial year. The written report has been compiled in accordance with the requirements of the CIPFA Code of Practice on Treasury Management. The Treasury Management Strategy was approved on the 21st of February 2024. Treasury Management is the management of our borrowing, investment and cash flows, banking, money market and capital market transactions, the effective control of the risks associated with those activities, and the pursuit of optimum performance consistent with those risks. The overall aim is to support the Council's financial health and contribute to the effective delivery of its services and strategic goals. Members are requested to consider the Treasury Management activities and the performance for the period covered, which I can confirm are consistent with the approved strategy. The first area is a wider economic review. The key points of the third quarter of 2024, so July to September, saw GDP growth stagnate in July, following downwardly revised quarter 2 figures of 0.5% quarter on quarter. A further easing in wage growth was witnessed as the headline 3-month year-on-year rate fell from 4.6% in June to 4% in July. CPI inflation hit its target in June before increasing slightly above it to 2.2% in July and August. The Bank of England initiated its easing cycle by lowering interest rates from 5.25% to 5% in August and holding them steady in its September meeting. 10-year gilt yields fell to 4% in September. The second item of key importance is the performance of council funds. Section 5 of Appendix A shows our capital position and prudential indicators, and Section 6 our borrowing summary. We have added no new borrowing in the reporting period. We do not anticipate additional borrowing in the near term. Our investments achieved a weighted average interest rate of 5.02%. With interest rates remaining relatively high, the risk of losing out on opportunities or financial returns is considered low. A review of the commercial investment strategy has been discussed previously, and CIPFA have now been invited, or selected and invited, to conduct this with us. Following the kick-off meeting with CIPFA on Monday, I will be writing to all group leaders to ask them to nominate members from their groups who can make skilled contributions or who hold a particular interest. I want to try to achieve cross-chamber involvement of the highest quality in building of a long-term strategic output in the best overall interests of all of our residents. Our third item is Treasury risk management. Both the SIPFA code and government guidance require the council to invest its funds prudently and to have regard to the security and liquidity of its treasury investments before seeking the optimum rate of return or yield. The council's objective when investing money is to strike an appropriate balance between risk and return, minimising the risk of incurring losses from defaults and the risk of receiving unsuitably low investment income. The previously mentioned 5.02% return against the Bank of England base rate of 5.25%, reducing to 5% in August, is evidence of well-balanced financial risk and return management. The fourth item is non-treasury investments. We hold £70.8 million of non-treasury investments in the form of directly owned property totalling £70.7 million and non-activated shareholding in a subsidiary of £100,000. Penultimate item is compliance. The Section 151 officer reports that all treasury management activities undertaken during the first half of the financial year complied fully with the SIPFA Code of Practice and the Council's approved treasury management strategy. Finally, our treasury management indicators. We measure and manage our exposure to treasury management risks using the indicators of security, liquidity, exposure to interest rate risk, structure of borrowing, maturity timing, and long-term investments. As you can reference in the report, we have complied with all of these indicators.
Thank you, Councillor Mickleborough. Would anyone like to ask any questions? Councillor Gray.
Yeah, just a couple of questions, if I may, and I'm on page, well, it's 14 of the report. So at the bottom of part 9, really. So when you said that not much has changed, I mean, obviously one thing has changed quite a lot, which is that we budgeted for investment interest return of 1.36 million, and we actually made 2.9 million, which is 113% more than we thought we would. So is there a reason why we were sort of so out on our budgeting, given that the amount of cash we've got knocking around in the various places that we've got doesn't, I mean, it does move around and it goes up and down, but in fairly predictable manners. That's my first question. The second one immediately follows on there, which talks about proportionality of investments, and the answer may well be that we're following the standard SIPFA guidelines in terms of laying out what this should look like. But it does seem rather odd that when we look at the net investment income, we're comparing it to the gross service expenditure, which is obviously an enormous number, because quite a lot of that is just kind of washing through what we do, when in fact actually a rather better metric might be, particularly as we go into a review around commercial investments, is to what proportion of our net budget is the income of the commercial investment portfolio currently making. So those were my two observations. I'll be curious to hear the response of the portfolio holder.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings, please. Oh, sorry. Yes, you need to answer. Thank you.
I'm now slightly thrown now. So I take my taste. And again, there we go, stop turning red. If I take myself back in time, as we think through, and again, there's lots of water under a bridge, we were not expecting as much money to be available as cash. We were also expecting interest rates to have fallen further and faster. From memory, I think we were at 3.25% from this point in the year when we were looking at the budget originally. That might be wrong. I'm calling those numbers off the top of my head. So with elements of capital money not having been paid through, with a 2.25% difference in interest rate between what we were expecting to be earning and what we were actually receiving, and Oliver's sterling work in terms of optimising what it is that we are achieving, we have ended up with more money. I am of the view that it is better to be budgeting to be prudent than to be optimistic. I think it's less likely to get yourself into trouble. and therefore we find ourselves with a bigger surplus than we might find. I take your point on in terms of the metrics and the proportionality of investments. I think that's well worth having a consideration around and how we report things back. I think we've looked to take opinions from people as we've gone over the course of the last couple of years. We've looked to improve reporting and show back to try to make things clearer for people who aren't perhaps financially aware, but also to give more detail for people who are and really want to be able to see some of those details. So happy to have conversations about how we might improve that. And certainly one of the things with SIPFA looking at the property investment side of things, one of the things they will be challenging us on is how do we look after the historic properties? Do we need to consider those more in line with the investment properties? How do we report forward on the investment properties? How do we frame what we should be expecting from a return on investment? So all of that will go into the mix, and I'm absolutely for improved transparency with all of that. And then confidence. What I want is everybody here to be comfortable with what we're proposing from an investment point of view, because in 20, 30 years' time, it might only be Nathan who's young enough to still be here. But what we should all be doing is being confident that, I speak for myself there. I'm hoping to be nicely retired and not worrying about, not worrying about council meetings. What we want to be able to do, though, is to look back and say, my goodness me, 30 years ago, didn't we work well? Didn't we make good investment decisions? Didn't we put some really good, interesting, forget the politics of which party you're in, let's look at the options that might be there that will really benefit me in 30 years' time, you in 30 years' time, our residents in 30 years' time, really strengthen the council. So that's really what I want to be working towards. As part of that, I encourage everybody to get stuck in.
Thank you. I'll now call upon Councillor Jennings to ask a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Gray covered off the first bit of what I certainly wanted to say, but I think just really to thank you and Oliver for the report. It was very comprehensive, and I think that those who don't have a detailed knowledge of this area, the glossary and the definitions at the back are quite useful, and certainly something that people can return to. I think really just there's a point to be made that actually that the Conservatives have been in with a small c in terms of budgeting that's delivered quite a surplus in terms of interest and other returns from not from council tax and all the things this year. That's what's enabled us to have the £750,000 pot to invest that we heard earlier this evening. That didn't come from the garden waste or whatever I think Councillor Wakefield was inferring earlier. It's clear it was in the report that it was down to the excess interest return, which is great news when it's that way, as long as it is that way and not the other, and that we're not overly relying on it, I think is the point. And also it's good news that our commercial investment strategy to date has been robust enough to provide a resilient amount of income to the council to support its needs as well. So I look forward to the review of that strategy. I will certainly be putting my name forward. Thank you.
Councillor Micklebower. Nothing to respond. Right, thank you. Anyone else wish to? Councillor Hodson-Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a discussion on a report, so it's not a matter of questions and answers. But I want to draw attention to a comment that was made about the proportionality of investments. And it's an observation I've made ever since I was first elected as a councillor 17 years ago, that council's accounts aren't presented in the same way as corporate accounts, and usually refer to income as being negative and expenditure as being positive. But also what that comes to is that there's the reference to gross service expenditure, and the proportionality of your investment income as a percentage of gross service expenditure is really a nonsense, because what you should be focused on is what is the return you're getting from your investments, and what are the alternatives, and what are the opportunities? Because the council provides a wide range of services, and for some of those services we charge fees, and for other services we provide them free. And we don't actually look at what proportion of our income comes from charges, what comes from grants, and what comes from investment income. And in the investment strategy, we don't really look at where the best returns are. We only look at it as an overall. So you could have some underperforming investments in your portfolio, but they won't be picked up by this kind of reporting. And I think that what you really need is council members to fully understand the dynamics of the council's finances and what comes in and what goes out. And the reason I say this is that some years ago, I persuaded another authority to change the way they reported it internally. They had to keep publishing the accounts as SIPFA reported it. But then we discovered that the actual fees and charges represented nearly half of the council's gross income. And what was being reported was just the net expenditure on services. And therefore, people didn't realise, members didn't realise quite what a large business the council was. But we also have this massive wash through of payments we receive directly from government and pay out, like housing benefit and other DWP things. And the inflow, being a lower tier authority, that the money that washes through this council, a large proportion of it doesn't belong to us and never has done. And we hold that. And by manipulating the timing of when we receive payments and when we make payments, we can increase the amount of cash available for short-term investment. And I think that the lack of transparency in public accounts, and this is not a criticism of the council or the way that we operate here, it's a criticism of SIPFA and the way that government reports accounts, leads to a lack of transparency. And when you try to explain it to non-finance people, they glaze over, and that's why you don't get the scrutiny that you really need on how best to invest.
Would you like to respond?
I would agree with almost all of those comments, and the only ones that I wouldn't agree with are just matters of just tiny bits of detail. The last time I presented the budget, I talked about us being an £82 million organisation rather than the 20 million, which is what SIPFA want to classify us as. I think there are lots of things that are slightly strange about local government finances. I do wonder at times whether or not it does create that problem, because as lay people, it's not really reasonable for people to start to dive into some of the detail. And you do look at a Thurrock or a Slough and think to yourselves, is it because it's so different to what people encounter in their day-to-day that it then becomes so much harder to scrutinise and so much harder to understand? So yes, absolutely. I know, as I said, I'm all for the transparency. I'm very happy to, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of Suzanne, who's pulling faces at me, behind me perhaps, to say absolutely, let's make it as transparent as we possibly can, let's improve it as we can, and give people the information they need to be able to make good decisions at the next budget round.
Yeah, Councillor Gledo.
Thank you. As chair of Overview and Scrutiny Panel, I think actually it's fair to say that we have gone out of our way to try and improve the information and training that is available for certainly particularly around Treasury, and we actually just did a recent training programme on that. So I think the point is well made. We certainly recognise that, and we are actually trying to address some of those challenges. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, does anybody else wish to ask a question? Or thank you very much, Councillor Mickleborough. Thank you. Moving on to item number 13, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority questions. The decision summaries for meetings held in October have been circulated with the agenda. Are there any questions, please? Yeah. Councillor Hashell, please.
I've already circulated this question beforehand, but I'll read it out for the council chair. So I understand that the CPA has recruited the entire economic development team from HTC, creating a significant gap likely to impact our strategic thinking and local plan. As a partner with the combined authority and with our leader sitting on its board, is this the action of a friend? So the question is, what measures are our partners? Apologies. I appreciate that we can't do anything in order for our staff can clearly leave if they want and so on and so forth for better opportunities. So the question is about, what are our partners doing to help us mitigate this? And then additionally, I would like to ask how much the CPCA staffing budget has increased over the last 2 years. And given that the CPCA is less burdened by statutory obligations than the district and county council, is it appropriate they are compensating their staff better and taking staff from these councils?
Councillor Conboy.
Thank you, Chair. And again, forgive me, please, for not standing. Thank you very much, Councillor Hassel, for the question. So to be clear, officers are entirely able to look to the open market for recruitment, and all of us in the public sector go to the open market when we recruit. We're required to do that. Our partner organisations don't specifically poach our staff, and I think they'd be quite offended if we suggested otherwise. Certainly what they do is they go out to open market. Some of our staff have seen those opportunities. I always think it's a backhanded compliment when you've had a member of staff in your organisation and they're looking for their next step and they take that next step. It's about enriching careers. It's about breadth of experience. It's sometimes a step up. Sometimes it's that broadening of taking those skills into a different setting. Certainly we have benefited hugely from people who have moved from our organisation to our nearest partners, combined authority, but sometimes to our neighbouring authorities, because they take with them an understanding of this organisation into their new home. And certainly we equally benefit when people come to our organisation from partner organisations because they bring that strength of knowledge and skill with them. So certainly we don't see it as a threat, and we don't see it as sort of a combative approach. It's certainly not poaching, and we wish those staff all the best when they move to their new homes. But equally, it often then gives us the opportunity to recruit new staff, and I'm very pleased to say that we've attracted some fantastic new people into our organisation to fill those vacancies where staff have moved on to take new opportunities. So that turnover is not necessarily a negative thing. It's often a very positive thing. And forgive me, I do apologise. You did give me notice in advance, Councillor Hassel, and I apologise in my haste to come out this evening. I need to come back to you with a written response on the budget increase. Yes, they do have a different mechanism in terms of the volume of money that they may choose to expend, but they also have to recruit competitively. And sometimes I would say that we're also in that position in local government. So market supplements, there are all sorts of things that we're all able to do within the recruitment sphere. We flex our muscles too as an organisation, but I will come back to you with that figure. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nish.
Thank you, Chair. And I will start by apologising for not giving this in advance, but you'll see why it's not in advance when I actually advise you what it is. On Friday, the 13th, coming up, there's an extraordinary combined authority.
Your microphone.
Okay, it does sound like it could be extraordinary. The single item on the agenda is the proposal to use the underspend to fund the difference between the current £2 cap on buses that the Labour government increased to £3 to cover us in Cambridgeshire till 2025. This is also the same mayor that praised the autumn budget as being a good budget for the combined authority area. Whilst I'm not against anything that really supports people getting on and using public transport, I'm concerned about the sustainability of it. Where is the long-term strategy? To date, good news is that the Combined Authority has funded Tiger passes, which I know one of my colleagues across the way has got one, allowing those up to 25 to travel for £1 on each journey. And so far, I believe, there's around 17,000. So that's been a good take-up. They've also covered the concessionary bus pass to allow travel at any time and not just off-peak. Again, fair enough. And subsidised many bus routes, despite Stagecoach still removing probably more than that is. But saying this is all welcome news, and but my concern is sustainability. So my point is that surely it would be not better up shoring up some of those routes across Huntingdonshire, where little or no routes exist, especially in our rural community. Now this cost, according to the paperwork, which I'm sure you've read as you've got your Friday one coming up, is £1 million for 3 months. And then what? So I'd like to ask the leader, one, if you are attending that meeting, and if so, what's your view on the use of this money and how are you likely to debate it? And will this debate, especially as it seems to have a small effect, probably on our residents within Huntingdonshire, for the money that's outgoing?
Councillor Conboy.
Thank you very much, Chair, through you. So thank you very much. You're right, it is a meeting that's coming up. It's an extraordinary meeting. I will be attending. This is an underspend, so there is an opportunity to spend it while it's there, and obviously it's time limited. I do think that supporting the £2 cap is the appropriate thing to do at this stage, but the other factors that are in play are the work that's been going on around the consultation around routes and franchising. So actually we know that that's coming forward. We know that's coming forward at pace. So like you, I'm anxious to see what that is. I'm anxious to see that detail. Officers are giving us a heads up that we're going to have that detail very shortly. And that will be the long-term strategic decision around how do we go forward. And like you, I'm keen to know what that is. And it won't surprise you to know that I will repeatedly be saying and what about our rural areas? I can tell you one good piece of news, which you didn't ask me, but I'm delighted to be able to tell you, is that we will actually get some visual mapping of where the routes are, because that's been something we've been asking for all the way through. It's not something that currently exists from bus companies in a way that's terribly useful for all of us. That will also help us understand where we've got cold spots that we might want to address, and equally how we can look at that system, particularly in our more rural areas, to get better impact. But thank you for the question.
Councillor Niche.
Thank you very much, Councillor. But that's interesting news. Because my concern is that it hasn't gone through scrutiny. And I don't know why it wasn't the heads up. I mean, they've known about this since end of October. Concern is that is the mayor keeping a grip on things? As a part-time mayor, it's really difficult to know whether he's managing to keep eyes on all what's going on and why it's taken so long to come through, whereas it could have gone through scrutiny, which may have helped. My view is it probably doesn't, because as you know, scrutiny comments don't go through to the board anyway. So it's almost still on that pointless scenario of scrutiny not giving you much help.
So if I may, Chair, we know that the officers have been working very hard on this, and actually this has come through at fairly short notice. I agree with you. But that's why it's missed the cycle. So obviously we are in the position we're in. That meeting will now take place on Friday, and I will come back and obviously report back. But you'll be able to watch it live, understandably. But I'm really keen that we get to see the timetable for the bigger strategic things, because that's the bit that we're all focused on. Because that hopefully will give us the assurance that we've got the kind of coverage we would aspire to. And I suspect we are still going to have an appetite for more.
Thank you. Councillor Devlin.
Thank you, Chair, to Executive Leader. I had various feedback from residents with regards to the recent franchising consultation, and I would just like this to be passed on at the next meeting, that residents really struggled with the just like we had feedback on the local plan with regards to the CPCA consultation responses and the survey, and found it very cumbersome and not user-friendly. But just to highlight and echo the importance of that consultation and the importance of the voices and residents, is particularly in rural villages, needing these routes, and again highlighting the importance of implementation within the time frame for that consultation, whilst the mayor is still in this council. Thanks.
Councillor Conboy.
Through you, Chair, I will take that feedback back. Thank you very much, Councillor Tevlin.
Councillor Davenport-Gray.
The government has expressed an interest in using the concept of local growth plans across the country. And as the member representing Huntingdonshire on the board, I'm wondering how the effects on Huntingdonshire are being represented there and how that is working through the Combined Authority.
Thank you very much. So, Chair, through you, the local growth plan, the work that's been done so far reflects mirrors the conversations we've been having in this council in terms of our growth. So those elements that we've already identified as being important have been reflected in the initial drafting. So things like Alconbury Station, which we know is incredibly important, those kind of aspects have been reflected. There will be a bigger developed piece of work that will come back through the process that will actually then be a much bigger plan. But certainly government is interested in growth, as you will have gathered. You will be pleased to know that we keep talking about good growth and sustainable growth, and that whilst we are encouraging the sort of growth that we've already identified, we are being very clear, we're not saying growth at any cost. So I hope that gives you reassurance. We're staying very clearly within the things that we've talked about in our corporate plan, the principles and priorities. But equally, if there is a desire to see some of the things that we have already identified as being important to our communities, then the answer is we'd like a seat at that table, please, because we don't want to miss an opportunity for something that's already been identified as an important piece of infrastructure or an important piece of growth. But it doesn't mean growth at all costs. So the answer is we're trying to make sure we have a seat around the table at this stage, but there will be a much more detailed piece of work that will come forward that we will all need to write on. Thank you.
Councillor Gray.
Just a very brief, will the executive leader agree with me type question. So there's a little theme has emerged this evening, because we started off with the amendment, we moved on to talk about the community fund. There was questions to Councillor Ferguson about the second homes and, you know, the governance elements around that. And the answer to Councillor Niche is an unsatisfactory answer, in my view, that it was all a bit too rushed. It was a bit short notice and we couldn't put it through the scrutiny process. So I think in 4 separate instances this evening, there are the governance elements of what is public money being spent here have either been circumvented or are currently deficient. So would she agree with me that we just need to tighten up on this? Because there's no real excuse to sort of say, oh, we've got to rush spending £1 million worth of money a week or whatever it is. Through the process without giving it proper scrutiny on the way through. So will she take that gentle encouragement from me on board at this season of goodwill?
Yeah.
If I may, Chair, thank you. I will take that gentle encouragement. I will feed that back into the process. Like you, I would have preferred this to have come through in a slightly different way. We are where we are, and I will try and make sure that we get the best out of it for Huntingdonshire, but I will reflect that back. Thank you very much, Councillor Gray.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 14, outcomes from committees and panels. Are there any questions arising from recent meetings? Over to you. No, thank you. That's good. We'll move on to item number 15. Variations of membership of committees and panels. Councillor Conboy.
None.
No. Councillor Martin.
None.
Councillor Sanderson, no. Councillor Wakeford. No. Councillor Ferguson. No. Thank you very much. And Councillor Davenport-Ray, no? Thank you. Right, well, that brings us to the end of quite a busy evening, and thank you very much for your contributions. So I now declare the meeting closed.
Happy Christmas, everybody.